That was a lot. That was a lot. Hey, I'm Stacey Summerout. Thank you so much for joining me on my little corner of the internet here. Before we get into today's episode, which is about having an authentic conversation with God, a very simple method from St. Ignatius that anyone can do, I want to tell you about a special event that is free coming up between May 30th and June 7th of, gosh, it's May already. It's later this month, the end of this month. I'm going to be leading a free surrender and stretch challenge leading up to the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart, which is on June 7th. So we're going to pray the Surrender Novena of Father Dolindo Ruotolo, who is Padre Pio's spiritual director. You can start your day off, you can do something good for your body as well as for your soul. And all the stretches in the videos are not yoga. They are stretches that I used to do when I was a professional dancer. I'm really excited to present this to you for free, so you can join using the link below. Let's get into today's content. I want to share a really simple method anybody can do for connecting with the Lord. If you're like me, you don't have a lot of time. Okay, you are a busy person. I have 4 children, ages 7 and under, and I'm trying to run a ministry and run my household, and we're building a house. There's a lot on my plate. So I need to prioritize the kind of prayer every day where I can connect with the Lord. It's very hard for me to carve out alone, quiet time, but when I do, I need to make sure that I am actually spending time in a heart-to-heart connection with the Lord. And I've done a lot of videos about my prayer life and how I manage that. Most days it's reading scripture and then letting that lead into an authentic conversation with the Lord. I have to get myself into like a different zone. And I think this is where it's so important to meditate on the life of Christ, because it gets you out of your to-do list. It gets you out of go mode, like busy mom, must do all of the things mode, and into a mode of wonder, of gratitude, of wanting to just spend time with the Lord. You know, it's really hard for me to slow myself down enough to listen and absorb his words. But when I do, and when I kind of take a few minutes and give myself a little space to just separate from the must-do list today, then I can really enter into an actual conversation. So let's talk about the colloquy. Colloquy is a fancy word for conversation. And the formula for a colloquy, a conversation, was given to us by the discernment guru himself, St. Ignatius of Loyola. You may be familiar with him because he's talked about a lot. His rules for discernment are talked about a lot. He specifies 2 different kinds of discernment. So we can discern spirits. Our spirit is being moved by angels or the Lord, or whether demons and demonic influence is responsible for the movements in our soul. That's called discernment of spirits. He also gives us 14 concrete rules for discerning decisions in our life. He calls them elections. So we have these great kind of really concrete rules that you can spend years studying from St. Ignatius of Loyola in his spiritual exercises. But what's really important is to take those rules within the context of the entire spiritual exercises, which is really a body of work about how to pray. And I love that St. Ignatius grounds his rules for discernment in this relationship with the Lord. So he gives us dozens of meditations. If you were to do all of the spiritual exercises, it would be a 30-day retreat. We can still do parts of it as lay people or people who simply do not have the ability because of our station in life to take a 30-day Ignatian retreat. But I love that St. Ignatius grounds these rules in these meditations, because it's really grounding your decisions in a relationship with the Lord. And St. Ignatius knew that. The rules are important, but the Lord really wants us. He wants to spend time with us. And so when we invest ourselves in our relationship with him, we're always moving closer and closer to his will and to understanding who he is as a person. St. Ignatius gives us these meditations, and then he gives us kind of a formula for going through each meditation. And then at the end, he talks about a colloquy. Very simple. Imagine Christ on the cross. You place yourself before him, and you remember that he's dying for you. He's giving his life for you. And you ask yourself 3 questions. What have I done for Christ? What am I doing for Christ? What ought I to do for Christ? And then you just have a conversation with him about it. Very simple. And so I did this colloquy yesterday in this specific formula that St. Ignatius specified, and it was amazing and moving. The backdrop in my own life is that I'm realizing what a spiritual toddler or baby I am. I have so far to go. I'm at this point in my spiritual life because I've been reading The Interior Castle by St. Teresa of Avila, and I've been reading Dan Burke's commentary on it called The Devil in the Castle, which both are wonderful. I'm actually having Dan Burke on the show. I just interviewed him. He is an amazing man. So look out for that interview coming up. But as I'm reading this text by St. Teresa, I'm just realizing like how immature I am in the spiritual life. You know what it feels like is it's like when you're a child and you have one of those toy cars. Do you ever have one of those? Oh my gosh. My next door neighbors had one and it was a Barbie car. I never had one growing up. I still love those cars. But I remember like riding in it one day and being like, I'm a grown up. Like I can go places. I have a car. I am legit. I'm too legit to quit. And then, you know, you get a little older and you realize, okay, that looks like a car. It kind of does what a car does, but it's not like going to get you places. And then you realize how long you have to wait before you can really drive and how much skill you need to acquire. And there's all these tests and waiting all day at the DMV. And there's a lot more that goes into driving than just being given a car for Christmas at age 5 and now you're a driver. I'm having that moment of realizing like, oh, I thought I was really selfless. No, I'm not. So that's the backdrop of where I was making a colloquy yesterday. And as I asked myself, what have I done for Christ? What am I doing for Christ? What ought I to do for Christ? I was realizing in a new way how insanely, ridiculously self-involved and selfish I have been my whole life. It's almost like I'm realizing I am so self-involved, I actually can't even step outside of that experience. So that's honest, and honesty is good. And I wouldn't want to go backwards and go back to thinking that I'm a legit driver when I just have this little dinky car that won't get me anywhere. But it's also kind of a discouraging moment, realizing how far I have to go and how far I am from being a true saint. And so as I'm making this colloquy, I look down in my hands, and as I'm imagining Christ on the cross, and he's looking at me with such love, you know, and he's dying for me, and he's just giving his life for me. And I look down at what I have in my hands, and it's a little box to give him. And in this box is twisted pieces of metal. Like he deserves jewels, he deserves diamonds, he deserves rubies and pearls and like true treasure. And what I'm giving him is little pieces like a bent fork that I just had like ruined before I gave it to him. Like, you know, when like as a parent, if I tell my kids to do something and they do it, but they do it with like fine, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because I have to. Like that was like my offering to the Lord, was all of the things that I'd given him half-heartedly or resentfully or with just such a level of self-involvement and selfishness and self-preservation. And I looked at this, and this is my whole life. This is how selfish I've been my whole life. And I cannot give him what he deserves as he's dying for me. And I was so sorrowful about that, like knowing how far the gap was for the first time between what I should be giving him and what I am giving him. But I still put it under his feet at the cross. And Jesus just looked at me with such love, and he smiled. And I'll tell you what he said, but I want to give this disclaimer first. When he speaks to me, sometimes it's only 3 or 4 or 5 words, but with those words is a whole wealth of meaning that isn't even conveyed from the words themselves. And so I'll tell you what he said, and then I'll kind of explain what that conveyed to me. So he looks at me as I put down this box in front of him of twisted scrap metal, and he looks at me and he smiles. And he just says with so much love, "It's really treasure, isn't it? It's okay. It's really treasure." And that was so meaningful and so beautiful to me. because it showed me, what it conveyed to me was that he doesn't expect more of me than what I have the ability to give. It's like when I tell my children, I just want you to do your best. And if that means a 43% on your math test, as long as you studied and you tried your best, that's good enough for me. And you know, my daughter, my sweet 6-year-old, she gives me a lot of love notes. I love you, Mom. And she draws a picture of me and her under a rainbow. And she might glue on little rhinestones that are, you could probably produce 100 of them for $1 in a factory, or for 1 penny in a factory. They're not real jewels. They're not real gold or silver or diamonds or rubies or pearls. But when she glues on those little rhinestones, she does it with love. And she just gives it to me with such beautiful confidence, knowing that she's done her best. And as her parent, I don't look at those rhinestones and say, this isn't real gold. This isn't a real ruby. What are you doing? No, I know that she doesn't have more to give. She's giving me her best. And her best is what I've made available to her in the craft drawer, because she doesn't have money to buy me a real ruby or diamond. And that was how I received Jesus's words, was he knows that in the mind and the heart of a child, twisted scrap metal is treasure. I am like a toddler, but that's okay, because this is the best I have to give. And furthermore, it was kind of an invitation, like, let's play with this treasure box. Like, I'm entering into your world. Like, Jesus was like, I'm entering into your world, Stacy. Like, I am with you where you are now. And all I want is the best that you have to give. That's all. And if the best that you have to give is twisted scrap metal, guess what? That's treasure to me. And then I felt like God the Father just showed me like a vision of how he looks at me. And I could just see myself with my little 90s bowl haircut. Those terrible haircuts I had as a kid, which I made worse by cutting my own hair, may I add, giving myself really short bangs right here one time when I was 4. But I could see myself just playing in a field, and God the Father just looking at me with love. And that little girl is timeless and beautiful to him. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. That's who I will always be. And if I'm not a great saint, it's okay, because I'm his little girl. And he wants me to play and to be free and to not worry about things that are beyond me, but just to do my best and to enjoy the gifts he's given me. So, that was a lot. That was a lot. I hope this speaks to you. Now I'm just a puddle on the floor. This is great. But thank God for his mercy and his love and his kindness and his willingness to enter into our experience. And whatever we have to give, it's good enough. That's all he wants. I hope that this video will inspire you to make a colloquy yourself and try to connect with the Lord through your imagination. And if you've never tried this before, I really invite you to give it a try and just see what happens, see what he wants to say to you today. So yeah, please share below what you found valuable or what the Lord has said to you in prayer. Now that I'm crying, it's really hard to end this video. What do I say? What do I do? If you want to watch others in this series, I just shared a few visions the Lord has given to me and what that looked and felt like for me. I also have shared St. Teresa of Avila's rules for discerning whether a locution, meaning a communication, comes from God, the devil, or your imagination. So enjoy those videos. I hope you find them helpful as well. And let me know what you want to see more of, because I got a lot more where that came from. All right, God bless you until I see you next. And let me know how your colloquy goes in the comments below. Let me know. Wait, I just lost it. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. I can't remember my things.